So in part one of what to do over summer for IB classes, I went over the why it's worth it to do stuff over the summer between years 1 and 2. And I also went over how to revise and condense your notes for all of the subjects. So this video is going to go specifically into IB history. And so just before we dive into those 5 specific examples I'm going to give you for IB history, what I want to do is just go over a reminder of why we're doing this, why we're taking the time on our very coveted summer break, especially in case you did not watch the first video. So why are we revising and condensing our notes? Quite frankly, you're an IB student and it's busy. As you know, you've survived year 1 and now you're going to step into year 2 with all new content, all new assignments. You will also be inundated with those 6 to 8 classes, however many you have at school, extracurricular activities, college applications, senior things, just wanting to have fun. Maybe you have a job. So senior year is going to be packed, and so why not take advantage of this time during summer? It's this huge pocket of time where you can intersperse work to go through and revise and condense your notes. And future self will thank you because, as you know, this year 1 material doesn't get tested until the end of year 2, and so you need to kind of have some consistent review, but also have some quick study sheets for you to refer to, and that's the purpose of this. So it's review to the next level. As you're going through and condensing your notes, you are studying and you're creating yourself some really quick study guides that you can refer to in May when you're reviewing for all those IB exams, doing all the senior things, getting ready for graduation. And so your future self will be very, very thankful if you take the time to review and condense. Even if you can only do some, at least do some. Some general ways you could do this, if you have not already done so, is you can annotate your notes, especially now that you have the hindsight of the full year done. So go ahead and annotate, maybe make some Quizlets. You could also type up your notes, which I know is a very popular strategy, especially putting it all into one doc, and then you can easily search terms. And then you can also make 1-pagers off of all that information. That's going to really condense in. I'll be providing an example in just a few moments. And last but not least, I would brain dump off of IB's topic and bullets. So for example, this is topic 10, bullets 1 through 6. I would just go through and think, if this is what IB wants me to know, what are the specific examples, evidences, peoples, events, etc. that I could bring up? At the bottom right of this screen is an example for a brain dump for topic 13, bullet 1, which is from the World War II topic. And my students pull out the big ideas of the top of the bullet, like events in Europe and Asia, cooperation, neutrality, good neighbor policy. And we may just start branching off and listing off what are all these examples of things that are happening. I have them do at least 2 steps with these brain dumps for the topics and bullets. The first layer is completely independent. What can they remember on their own? I have them usually do this in a duller color, and then when they compare with a partner, they do it in a color that pops out. And they only put the things that they did not get, but their partner got, as the things that pop out, because that's a reminder, I did not remember these things initially off the top of my head, and that will help filter out to study. Also, for IB history, year 1 history of the Americas, we studied 3 topics. Just with the way that the math works out when you go to take the actual IB exam, we really suggest you only, now having studied all 3 topics, pick your top 2. So as I'm going through the review strategies to revise and condense your notes, I would do it for the 2 topics you feel the most strongly about that you could write your paper 3 exams about. We have to be efficient with our time. So again, pick 2 topics and then go ahead and pick at least one of these strategies that I'm about to give. Now that you have an understanding of why it's important to go through and condense and revise your notes, I'm going to go through specifically how you can do that for IB history, since that's what I teach. I specifically teach IB history year 1, history of the Americas, so that's where these examples will be coming from. So what you have probably from IB history is a stack of notes about that big, We want to take it and make it a lot smaller. So what you're going to do through reviewing and reading over your notes again, you're going to be deciding, how can I recategorize this? What are the most significant things that I need to know for the paper 3 exam? And so that's what we're going to base this all on. I'm going to provide you 5 different ways that you can go ahead and break down and revise and condense your notes. You do not have to do all of them. You might not have time for all of them. Some of them might not be as effective for you. So you need to decide what is going to be best for you. So if you only have time for one thing, or you want to get the most bang for your buck, then what you want to go ahead and do is what I call a one-pager. So a one-pager is where you simply summarize a unit to one page, get it down, and you can color code and illustrate and just really get across what are the most important concepts. This is really easy for IB because IB gives you a topic and then 6 bullets to go along with the topic. So I always have my students break it down 1 bullet at a time. A really effective way to do it for history, I'm going to show you some examples now, are to do a timeline, since timelines matter greatly to history, understanding the causation, the consequence, how things fall into place, what's happening at the same time. So this is an example for World War II, and it's broken down into different color coding. So this is one way you could go ahead and make a one-pager. Another way you could study for history is looking at who are the important people, who are the important events, and simply create a chart. So this is an example for, again, topic 13, World War II. These are the very important people broken down into countries, why they were significant. And then on the other side, we did VIEs, very important events, have it chronological, have the significance of those events. Now, usually what I do is have my students go beyond that and determine what should go into their one-pager. So they start with a blank piece of paper, and they themselves get to decide what is the most important. So this is an example of a one-pager that I created for topic 10, bullet 1, the U.S. and their expansionist foreign policies. So you definitely don't have to get as artsy into this. I've recently gotten into calligraphy, so that's kind of the jam I'm going with. But as you can tell, I've included some important buzzwords that I'm going to want to remember, that I know my teacher said over and over, that I know I would want to get in on a paper 3 exam about topic 10, bullet 1. I've included the key questions my teacher provided. I've included a map with some symbols, some key concept connections, historiography, a timeline. So you can see I'm kind of combining the previous 2 ideas that I just showed you. I've also included make it sticks, which are ways to remember all those fun historical terms and dates. And so this is an example of a one-pager that you can create. You can also create the one-pager to go along with what the bullet's asking for. So for example, topic 10, bullet 2, Spanish-American War, causes and effects. So a lot of my students created their one-pager with just causes on one side and then the effects on the other to really get that across. So again, if you only really want to spend time doing one thing, I would really suggest doing a one-pager. Next up, big suggestion, in order to score high on paper 3, you're going to need to include an evaluation of perspectives or historiography. So you really need to make sure you have it. And you don't want to be flipping through all those notes trying to find, oh, what were these big ideas? Who were the historians? Instead, you want to get it all into one packet. And I know it's hard to remember all the historians' names. There are so many. What I always tell my students that's the most significant is, do you know the big historical questions and debates about that event or about that person? And then do you know the different perspectives? So if you can't remember the historians' names, at least make sure that you remember what are those big historical debates. So this is for topic 16, the Cold War. These are the bullet 1 questions we had, the bullet 2, bullet 3, and so on, where we just went through and we just pulled out what were those big questions and what were the different viewpoints to include. I would do that for every single unit, and then you have it just right here, all in a packet. The next thing I'm going to suggest, very specifically for IB, are your IB key concepts. There are 6 of them, so make sure that you are fairly distributing it. And so this is just a very simple way, especially since on paper 3, you're going to want to reference at least one key concept throughout, and then you're providing examples, connecting it to your thesis, to your bold claim. Bring in your IB knowledge, show you understand those bigger historical themes beyond the facts. How are these things connecting? How are they significant? What are the perspectives? This is for topic 10, bullet 1, and so I would suggest just doing a quick version of this. And you can also apply this to your other subjects as well. They might not have key concepts, but I know you have essential questions and you have greater themes that you're looking at, especially in the world languages and in English. So you can go ahead and break down a sheet like that. And notice it doesn't need to be pretty. I just did some color coding based off of the sections of the notes. It's kind of a little sloppy. I'll probably go back and add more. That's totally okay. The next most effective way to study is you have to think about the subject you're studying and how is an effective way that I can study and memorize for this specific subject. So one really great way to study histories is through leaders. And so even though this is history of the Americas, we do have quite an emphasis on the United States. And so I think it's a really effective way to break it down by presidents. I actually did this myself when I was in high school and I was taking AP US history, not IB. I created a little booklet for myself breaking down each president, what he did, what was important about him. And now I have a much more solidified system that I teach to my students. It's called Think Fast. It's actually an English teaching strategy for characterization, where you're just breaking down each president into think fast. So the F stands for feelings, the A for actions, the S for sayings, and the T for thoughts. I then further broke it down into, on each category, the left side of each of the fast letters is going to be the president himself, and then the right side are other people or other countries. So what are others' feelings about him? Or even what were the domestic sentiments at time? What type of atmosphere was the president stepping into? What type of atmosphere did he leave? What type of atmosphere did he have to endure? And then I went through and did that for all of them. I also suggested to my students to color code each president by their political party. That way that's also a quick visual cue for them, including a picture, who were their major secretary of states, what big events were they a part of. So I would really suggest doing this because it's going to be hard to remember everything that a president did. And so if you have it all in one sheet, pulling from your notes, it's going to make it so much better. Now again, I've recently gotten into calligraphy, which is why mine looks this way. You don't have to make it look like this. For example, I actually did a rough draft before I did that, and mine was all typed. It was super easy. I had notes, the PowerPoint's up on the left, and then just quickly transferring, copying and pasting over into this. And that is a very quick way, very effective as well. Last but not least for IB history is this is history of the Americas. And like I said, although we have a very strong emphasis on U.S. history, we still have to study these other countries. And it's going to be important to remember examples. Now, when we look at Canada, it's a little bit easier because up north, there's just one country, Canada. But down south in Latin America, there are many, and it can be very confusing. There's lots going on, especially since there are lots of similar stories happening within each country that the U.S. is doing. And so what I really suggest doing is printing out a little map of Latin America, labeling the countries, what's going on, and then just really quick jotting a note. What happened? Oh, under Taft, there was an influence of American investment in Haiti, and then we occupied them 1915 to 34. And so what you're doing by going through and categorizing and labeling these is you're reviewing, and it might help stick in your brain a little bit more, but you're also providing yourself a really quick visual, a really quick way to study. I also had overall what were our intentions, including the different diplomacies from topic 10, bullet 3, from big stick to dollar to moral, the Roosevelt Corollary, the Pan American Conference, the Monroe Doctrine, of course, and then I highlighted based off the bullets so I can kind of tell the progress. I'd really suggest doing this for all of your topics. This will specifically come and be important for topic 16, the Cold War, because we know that a lot of foreign policy was applied in Latin America during that time as a way for the U.S. to exert their influence and control in Latin America even more. So These are 5 ways that you can go through, revise, condense your notes, because wouldn't it be much nicer to study a stack, like maybe a little bit bigger than this, as opposed to a stack full of like really sloppily written notes. So these are some different ways. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. And now we're going to go on to how you can revise or prepare for your internal